Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Hey y'all, I'm KC.
And I'm Tyler.
And this is the elk hunting series from the Element Podcast.
If you want to get on elk, it helps to hang with dudes that know elk.
And that ain't us, but luckily the dudes that know elk have cell phones and we called them up.
So whether you're a veteran of September or you're just cutting your ivories in the elk woods, you're going to hear something here that'll help you get the full draw this fall.
If you find this podcast helpful, poke that subscribe button and go check out our elk hunting playlist on YouTube. Now let's rock and roll.
All right, so now on the phone we've got Eric Whiting, and this guy, let's see, unofficially, we have to give him an unofficial title, KC.
Okay.
Because he didn't want any official titles. Unofficially, I'm going to say elk slayer in the OTC units in Colorado. Let's say that.
You gave away too much.
Oh, my goodness. Did I? Oh, okay.
Oh, man. The pressure is on with some title like that now. Jeez.
Yeah. No, you have had success in some of the OTC units, so we're going to talk about that some. You also are going to not be hunting OTC this year, so that's exciting, and we'll let you talk about as much of that or as little of that as you want to, and we'll just kind of go through. We're going to have some names on this series that are guys that you and I and KC were just talking about as being like dudes that kill big elk and have some kind of notoriety and do a good job and everything. But what we want to appeal to are the people who listen to this podcast, and a lot of those people are guys who don't live in elk country, so they're going to be hunting OTC units if they go a lot of times, and they're not going to have a ton of experience, and they're looking to kill rags. And, of course, if a 350 walks in, that's great, but, like for me even, I've never killed an elk. I've been on a few elk hunts or whatever, and some of them I've videoed, some of them I've been the hunter, and it's never worked out for me. And I think that one thing guys can get really discouraged by is – for instance, I'll take my dad as an example. Like he loves to hunt, but he doesn't want to go out into the elk woods and not know what he's doing and not have a chance to shoot a nice elk. And so like for him, he would probably come home with a rag, but he probably wouldn't be super thrilled about it. And I think there's guys out there like that, and I think there's guys out there that just want to kill an elk like me and KC. Sometimes, you got the same mentality when you're in OTC especially. And so this is an exciting podcast for us to do, man. So the first thing I want to do is kind of talk about who you are. And obviously you're from Colorado. Well, it's not obvious, I don't guess, but you've hunted a lot in Colorado.
Tell.
You are from Colorado, so there's a little bit of local knowledge that you're able to gain, I think, for sure. But you grew up in Colorado, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different perspective than most people. I'd say I grew up in Western Colorado, elk country, and I wasn't like a super big hunter or anything. I mean, I would rifle hunted very fair weather, like his high school kid, while I did cross country on Saturdays and Sunday, afternoon I would go out in the woods for about 3 hours and call it good. So it's like, it's more, it wasn't like I grew up doing it and I had to kind of learn how to hunt, later in life. But yeah, I'm in Colorado, which entirely informs why I hunt the way I do and why I hunt over the counter elk. I mean, if I lived anywhere else, I'm sure I would be doing that, but this is.
Have you hunted outside of Colorado for elk?
Yeah. Yeah. I've hunted Wyoming.
Okay. Okay. So was that like comparable to, like, is that an attainable unit or is that something that that most people wouldn't have a shot at?
In Wyoming?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's totally attainable. So I've been on 2 hunts in Wyoming, limited draws, very attainable. And I have a 7-point and a 6-point from those hunts.
All right.
And then in Colorado, I have yet to shoot a 6-point.
Yeah. So we have a lot of deer hunters on the podcast. What do you mean by 7-point? Let's clear this up.
We're talking, Western elk style. So 7 on each side.
So pretty studly.
He's studly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever shoot a bigger bull than that one. It was that was a pretty incredible hunt. With my dad and just a really cool spot where he grew up and where he hunted with my grandpa. And so
cool. That's cool. So how many bulls total have you shot?
I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4,
fingers
5,
and toes now.
6.
Take your socks off.
No, not that many. 6.
6. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's quite
7.
a few, man. 7. Oh, keep adding. Yeah. That's cool. So 5 Colorado bulls and 2 Wyoming bulls, right? Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
So is there a major difference like in the style of hunting or whatnot that you had to do Wyoming versus Colorado?
Yeah, huge difference. And that's one of the coolest things about elk hunting is all the different tools in the toolbox, so to speak. That's what I really love about it is you get to play it however, whatever is going to make you more successful wherever you are. And where I happened to be in Wyoming was, it's not a hard unit to draw by any means, but there's just no one else out there. And the elk are doing elky things. And so they were behaving like elk would, which made them very callable. And that meant that the best tactic in that scenario, both those scenarios, was to call in the first year herd bull, and the second year was a big old satellite bull. And calling was 100% the way to go in that place. Whereas most of the stuff I learned on here in Colorado, the elk are generally running from calls and especially bugles.
Yeah. So how do you know that it's a herd bull and that the other is a satellite bull?
So in those situations, I'll just do a quick run through what they look like. But the 7-point, I actually glassed him up. He's the first bull I saw on that hunt. He was way up on this remote bench, kind of a tight bench, and a little bit away from where all the other elk were. So that's a good sign that he was one of the better bulls in the area. Just because he's like, I'm in a spot, sitting tight, no one's going to really mess with me and my cows. So I knew exactly where he was and was able to sneak in close enough to him. And I knew the bull I was going after at that point and that he had a herd with him. Whereas last year's bull in Wyoming, we didn't actually know exactly where the herd bull was. So it caused some confusion there, but we did see 2 satellites across the drainage. And there was just so much excitement going on with elk going berserk. And then we just threw out this estrus call and just this guy came all the way across the drainage for it. Actually, both of those satellite bulls came entirely across the drainage at a run. And the bigger one that I ended up shooting chased off the smaller one multiple times. And it was they were just losing their mind crazy, which is just so different from anything I generally experienced here in Colorado. But it's so fun too. How bonkers for an elk to come running a quarter mile all the way down a hill, then another 200 yards back up a hill, right into my lap, just screaming his head off. Like, that's insane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. So, hey, talk about it. What the estrus call is real quick.
So estrus call is more of like a cow and heat call, where generally you'll hear it a little bit later in the season, I would say, towards the end of September. Might even in some of these states that have early October rifle hunts, that's kind of a call that would maybe work better at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a cow and heat. And so later in the season, when a lot of cows have been bred, you throw out a call like that, and you got all these bulls that are kind of like, they've been fired up, season's been rolling on a little while, and they're all just running around looking for those last hot cows.
Mm-hmm.
And so you throw out an estrus call, and the idea behind it is that it's like, hey, this cow just came in a heat. Everyone's kind of battling for these last cows, and so it creates a lot of excitement with those bulls.
Is it kind of like just a long, drawn out, longer kind of cow call, or is like, what's it sound like as compared to what you would normally hear somebody cow calling?
So like I usually do sweet cow calls, so like where it's like a little bit softer, kind of nicer tone, but then a estrus one would have that like I don't know how to do it without it call on
like
me,
a more
but it's
raspy,
It's kind of buzzy at the
forced.
end, right?
It's got that buzz like on the end almost. Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Yeah, it's like you can almost not equate it, but think of a mallard drake type thing like that in it, and that's kind of what it is. But so calling isn't really your forte. I mean, it sounds like you're plenty proficient in it, but like when you go to Colorado, you talked about elk running the other way, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, calling is it's the last sort of ditch effort here in Colorado. And I've tried it a million times. It's never worked. I know guys that it does work for sure, in over-the-counter units.
Yeah.
And I do.
I've called in both my bulls from Colorado. It's weird, but it's kind of like I'll walk around with a key looking for a door that it fits.
Right. Yeah. That's what I hear from the guys that are doing it as well. Whereas it's like, I want to hunt and kill the bulls that I'm in right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm in a bull, I want to figure out what tool is going to be the best one to actually like drop that elk right there. So yeah, sometimes I'm fishing with some cow calls as I'm walking through the forest, just seeing what's going on. But, I mean, there's so many other tactics. That's what's so sweet about elk hunting is you can spot and stalk them like you would a high country muley, or you can, ambush one on a bench or a saddle. Sometimes you can spot and stalk on little benches. I mean, there's just so much a person can do. Like a lot of success for these over-the-counter guys happens while sitting wallows, as boring as that sounds.
Yeah, I've done it. It is boring, very much.
Yes. Yep.
And I haven't had success with that, but I know guys do. So I've got a question for you, kind of broader in that sense, though. We're talking a lot of OTC stuff here. I have one particular unit that I've hunted most of my elk hunting career in Colorado, and have had good success compared to like the unit numbers, but I don't kill every year, But I feel like my advantage in that is going back to that unit year after year and kind of knowing where the pockets of elk tend to be. But I also really have this like yearning to go check out new stuff. Do you feel like, as if a guy's going to approach elk hunting as an OTC hunter, it's good to know a unit like the back of your hand, or is it good to jump around and learn new things and look for new and better opportunities? For
sure. Like I couldn't agree more that knowing a unit and knowing where you are and how the elk behave and how the other hunters behave in that area means the world. Like just spending time during the rut in an area is key. Cause I mean, the elk, like you can go in there during the summer, they're not going to behave the same way.
Oh no. Yeah.
And I spend a ton of time e-scouting, but you still can't picture exactly how the elk are going to behave, or where all where they're going to be running around to, where all the wallows are they're going to hit, what sort of go-to bedding areas there are. I mean, there's some of these bedding areas under pine trees. You look at them on a digital map, and and it just looks like trees. But then you get there, and it's a full-on barnyard underneath some of these pine trees. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And same could be said for wallows and all sorts of things like that. And you just don't know until you go there, and then you start going, and it's like the black map starts coming to life, and you start seeing how it actually is in the real world, and how the elk move, and you find stuff, and you're like, oh, here's a wallow. Yeah, there's nothing going on here, but yeah, mental map. Keep this noted, or here's a little spring. Here's this little bench, like in the middle of nowhere. It looks perfectly flat. Or not flat. It looks like it's perfectly on angle with a slope when you're looking at a topo, but here we go. It's like a 10-yard deep bench, perfectly flat on this hillside. And so you find all these little spots, or is what I do. And then I start making these mental maps, and year after year I learn more, and I branch out a little bit further. That's important as well.
Yeah.
So I'm always learning more and adding more to the map.
Yeah.
Cause then all I do during season is I just start playing connect the dots, right? I'm like, okay, here's where I'm going first. And once I go there, if there's no sign, here's where I'm going second. And it's like, I got a full route already planned in my head, of what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go. And, then it just comes down to execution, right? Like you're going and you're like, okay, here we go. Yeah. This wallow's dry. Next one you get to, okay, this one looks like it's had a little action maybe a week ago, or something's been walking around, but there's been no, wallow really behavior. Someone's just been drinking out of it, so you keep moving, and then, you keep moving, and you go uphill maybe a little bit of some of these big bedding areas, and you start smelling, you're like, bingo, right there.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I like it, man. So, you've mentioned a ton of good stuff, and we're going to try to break it down a little bit. There's so many things I want to talk to you about because I just love this stuff, right? But I think one of the first things you mentioned just then was e-scouting. And, you said you do a ton of that, but there's things that you can't see e-scouting, right? But if a guy is in, like, West Virginia and he doesn't draw one of their coveted elk tags over there,
which he's not going to.
Yeah, he's probably not going to.
That's what you're saying.
Very tough drop. But so all he can do is e-scout. Pretty much, unless he's going to take a trip out west with his family in the summer, and then it's like real minimal what you can actually get done on a trip like that. I know from experience. But what are you going to look for when you're looking at, the plethora of Colorado OTC units? Like, if you want to narrow it down to a unit or two, like, how are you going to look at it from like a topo or aerial viewpoint? How do you narrow down to a unit that way?
Oh man, that's so hard. And like, it's hard for me to say because I didn't start that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I started hunting around my house. I'm like, here's the woods. I'm just going to go out there.
Yeah. Same way here. Not around my house, but like, my family has been hunting the same unit since the 70s off and on. It's just understood that's where we're going. I didn't have to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, it's so hard to say. And because I do run into guys, and like, I know exactly where everyone's going to pick out on Google Earth, and it's a good spot. I'm telling you. Yeah. There could be elk there, but there's also like tons of guys. And I'll just give you an example. Hiking in last September, I went in opening weekend to a spot, and like I passed 3 guys right out the gate, and so they were just so loaded down with gear, and it was all the great gear, but it was like, they're not going to go anywhere. Like, they're not going to get anywhere close to where they need to get to. And then I get up to where I'm planning on hunting, and I'm like in a very particular spot, like hidden campsite, all this stuff. And then I get up to this ridgeline and start glassing around for elk. And there's 3 different groups of people on these surrounding ridgelines that I'm glassing up. And I know 2 different ones of those groups. Like, I saw their campsite was on the ridge. But the other thing is, like, they couldn't even move off the ridge. And so it's like, they get there, but then they can't hunt once they get there because they're just whooped.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I would say you're going to find a lot of stuff that looks real elky. But keep in mind, like, you still got to hunt them once you get there. Mm-hmm. And that's where the actual hunting starts. Like these two guys I saw on this, they were bivvy camping on a saddle where the elk used all the time. And they were so much as like, there's a little snow on the saddle. They were melting snow and boiling that for their water.
Yeah.
And they couldn't leave. Like, they were totally immobile. Mm-hmm. Like, they couldn't go anywhere because they were just crushed. And then, so they were up there for the weekend. And then Monday morning, when they walked down the mountain, that's when I ended up shooting the elk. And it's just like, you got to be able to hunt them once you're there. But it's just funny because, like, you see these spots on Google Earth and it's like, yeah, man, this is the spot for sure. But yeah, I would just say, make sure you can hunt wherever you are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And pretty much, if the lines look sort of tight, it's still really steep. And when you're talking topo, that's something I've learned, at least being a flatlander. It's like, if you look at something, you can definitely tell, like, the real steep stuff because the lines are almost touching, right? But then, like, you look at something like, oh, those lines are kind of spread out. That's still going to be pretty steep compared to, like, regular flat ground. And it's just kind of one of those things that you kind of got to consider. Do you think that on a lot of these OTC units, there's fairly easy easy's not the right word. It's accessible, right? There's not a ton of, like, wilderness units, or there are, but there's some that aren't too, is what I'm trying to say. Like, you can definitely have two tracks.
There's something for anyone.
Yeah.
You can, if you want to hunt the roads, you can absolutely hunt the roads during archery season or rifle season, whatever you want to do.
Do you feel like bivvy hunting a lot of times in OTC units is a little bit of an overcommitment, because then you're, like, stuck where you decided you want to go, or you've at least committed a lot of time and energy to get there?
It depends on how mentally and physically prepared you are. Like these guys I was talking about, like, they had bivvies and were trying to bivvy hunt, but they were spike hunting. Yeah. Like, they weren't mobile enough and able to function by walking all day with their camp on their back.
Yeah.
But in other situations, like, if you go up and set up a spike camp and the elk are out of the drainage, then you might not see them the rest of your hunt. Mm-hmm. And then you're just twiddling your thumbs, like, wishing you were back home and missing your family,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, like, if you are in really good shape and have incredibly light weight gear, like, being able to be mobile with your gear on your back is a huge asset, because then you can keep moving and keep finding those elk. But the way I like to do it, because I hunt both wilderness areas and BLM and Forest Service.
Oh, now we know where you're at for sure. Okay.
It just depends on so many different factors as to where I'm going to go.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. But a lot of times what I'll like to do is I'll bring really comfortable stuff and just set up a camp around my car. Mm-hmm. And then I'll just start playing connect the dots, right? And first thing I got to do is find these elk, because they're going to be somewhere. So I don't want to hike in with crazy amounts of weight on my back and absolutely kill myself for the rest of the hunt. Well, all I'm doing is I'm looking for them. So instead of picking out, like, this drainage on a map and saying, okay, I'm hiking 5 miles in here and I'm posting up campsite and this is where I'm hunting, it's like, I'll drive in, set up camp, which is, like, super easy and comfortable to do. And then I'll just go light and fast all day hunting until I find them. Mm-hmm. And I'll do that as long as it takes. And then I'm also not committed to a bivvy hunt or spike camp if the elk are, like, 2 or 3 miles from the road. Like, I don't need to do that unless I have to. Like, I don't want to make it harder on myself, because then I'm not able to perform as well when I actually need to.
Right.
So it'll sometimes take me 2 or 3 days before I'll actually commit to a spike camp or a sort of bivvy type situation. But that's only if that's what the elk are requiring.
Gotcha.
So it just kind of depends a little bit.
Yeah. You talked about this just a second ago when we were kind of discussing some e-scouting stuff, and you mentioned how things can be so much different when you get to a spot that you were looked at on the map. And so, and like I think about this in the whitetail world, which you and I and KC have been talking a lot about deer lately. But when you're e-scouting, say you're going out of state in the whitetail world, like the same thing happens. I mean, there's guys that are like well-known big buck killers on public land. Like people just, think that they're the greatest, but they really only hunt, Wisconsin marshes or like Iowa and around their house, and they've killed like, 8 booners on public or whatever. And it's like, that's awesome. But, you do have that advantage when you hunt there year in and year out. And so, it kind of all plays into what you're talking about here with how things can change when you get in there. So it's also good to hunt a similar area from time to time. I mean, we see it like we had our buddy Adam down this past week, and he was surprised by some of the things that we would talk about. And even in the state here, like regionally, deer key in on different things. Some places you're going to see deer eating persimmons a lot, and some places you're going to see them eating prickly pear, or something like that. And so elk probably are the same way, where like even though that's an elk food somewhere in Wyoming, it might not be an elk food really in Colorado because they've got better stuff or different things that they prefer. And so anyway, I'm kind of saying all this to just say that the e-scouting only goes so far, right? So like, how often do you e-scout an area, go in there, and you're surprised by what you find, good or bad?
Every time. I mean,
okay. Cool.
I have no idea what it's going to look like when I get in there. I can look at it as much as I am right now. Like I'm going crazy on Onyx, just trying to figure out this new unit I'm going to be hunting this year. And I have no idea what it's going to look like till I actually get in there. So what it's going to come down to is I'm just going to have to be able to cover some territory when I get there and find all the, like every little key identifying point I'm looking at right now on this map, or that I've kind of e-scouted up. I'm going to have to go check it all out first and foremost. Like I'm going to have to get in there during season, see what's happening. Okay. How are the elk moving? Like here I am on day 1, elk are in one spot. On day 2, the elk are in another spot. So I'm just learning what they're doing, what their patterns are, where they're moving, how they respond to pressure. What all these different key marking points look like. And then that'll allow me to go in and hopefully be effective when it comes time to pull the trigger. Yeah.
So you're going to be able to go in there some before season, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I don't know. Just with the new little guy at home, I don't know how much time I'm going to get to go down there, because this is, it's about 4 hours away, which, it's not very far.
I've got a child carrier backpack, man. Get after it, put them on your back and go.
I know. I got one of those too. I'm looking forward to taking him out there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I want to, but I also just know like so much of it comes down to during the season. Like it's great getting up there during the summer, but everything changes once the rut starts kicking in. Like the elk behavior is so different. Honestly, like right now is one of my favorite times to scout, like probably this weekend or last weekend, because the snow is just kind of melting in these high country spots. So you can get a good lay of the land before all the vegetation comes up. But come like July, when it's kind of a traditional time for people to go scouting, I mean, the grass is deep. The elk are in their summer ranges. They're not obviously even close to showing any rut behavior. Everything just changes. So it's like this time of year, if I am going to do any on the ground scouting, I'll try and do it like right now, early June to late June, maybe. And then I'm just looking for the same stuff I'm looking for when I'm e-scouting, and it's, rubs, benches, wallows, dark timber, escape routes. Escape routes are huge because you're probably going to scare some elk. So it's always nice knowing where they're going to go.
Yeah. So talk about that. Like, everything just seems so much bigger. By the way, the snow just melted here too. I just want to make that point several months ago. But the escape route thing, like when I think about escape routes for like a deer or something, a lot of people talk about them when you're looking at like property management and creating bedding, and people talk about like hinge cutting trees to create bedding, but you have to leave an escape route if the deer doesn't feel comfortable bedding in there. I'm guessing that this is a similar thing. So like, or is it to where like, for instance, if you bump elk that are bedded or elk that are on their feet, is this going to be two different things, or is it all a similar escape route? And like, how big is an escape route? Because for a deer, it could be like 20 yards. You know what I mean? It could be a whole lot different.
I mean, as far as to answer the one question about, if they're bedding versus standing, I wouldn't necessarily say that matters as much. I would think it's more of how do they bust me? Do they see me? Do they smell me? Do they hear me? Like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. Like if they smell me, then they are escaping for miles. Like they're fully gone.
Yeah.
Peace out. You're never seeing those elk again. Yeah. If one sees you and say a herd of 10, like, yeah, you can actually keep dogging them for a little bit. Probably like they're going to move off a little bit, but the herd bull is going to gather up that herd again and like say, hey, what's the deal? Like, chill out. You're like, I'm in control of this situation. And so you can kind of like hang with them a little bit sometimes if just a cow sees you. If they hear you, just know they're gonna hear you generally when you're approaching. So it's like that they're probably not going to bump, but they will be curious to know who you are and what you are. And so they're trying to figure out if they should run or not. So a lot of times that's another time when I will throw out a call like that, like, sort of call where it's like, hey, who are you? Sort of thing.
You've got some
That's
some
cojones.
guts, sir.
Yeah.
Man, I've never had what it took to do the bark. Like that's scary.
Well, it's different than a bark in my opinion.
Oh,
Like a huff or something.
Yeah, it's like a higher pitch, I'd say. Like the bark's like danger, get out of here.
Yeah.
But it's almost like the precursor to the bark where it's like, hey, yeah, like I'm a little uncertain, kind of higher pitch voice, like making me nervous, dude. Show yourself. Like, where are you?
Yeah.
And actually you can keep that in mind. Like this has never worked for me, but I've in the past I've tried to like have a decoy so that I can rip it off my pack with one hand, because I'm like holding my bow with one hand. I want to rip the decoy off with the other hand while still not losing it, hopefully. So I'll bump a little bull out of his bed or something, and I'll just throw out that quick, like, show me where you are sort of like noise. And then I'll throw out that decoy and they're like, whoa, hey, what's up with you? Like, you look a little funny. I haven't met you before. Sort of thing. And it's like, if you're with someone, I think there's an opportunity there to kill an elk. So like the person in the front whips out that decoy real quick, freezes the herd or that bull or whatever. And then the other person just like maybe makes some cow noises and sneaks around, because you got to do it fast. I mean, I've had one freeze like that for up to 5 minutes, which is plenty of time if you're in the right situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dude, this is why I like talking to people that aren't quote unquote celebrity status, you know, like they just don't, like sometimes you get guys that'll just regurgitate just these things that you hear over and over and over again. And then you talk to somebody like you and it's like, you have some next level tactics that you don't hear about very
like some
often.
Elk Street smarts kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some common sense type stuff.
I don't know if it's next level. It's, these other guys are shooting big bulls, remember?
Sure. But dude, but like creative, you know what I mean? Like the creative aspect is what I love, man, because it gets old. There's a million podcasts out there, you know what I mean? Like, why would you listen to so-and-so on this podcast when he's going to say the same thing he did on the last podcast you listened to, you know? So that's what I really love, the creative aspect. So
have you ever been a little bit willy about whipping out that decoy on
Lil
OTC.
Willie?
What?
What did you say? Little Willie?
He's a
Yeah,
rapper.
Free Willie.
He's a rapper that Casey's been
Nah,
listening
has
to.
it ever felt kind of sketch whipping out that decoy on OTC's ground?
Like afraid people are gonna shoot me?
Yeah.
No,
Okay. Good.
not in archery season. Not
Yeah.
even in muzzleloader season, which is
Really?
in archery season.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not worried about that. So what I did is I got a Montana decoy, which it was like the one with the cow elk head that pops out.
Yeah.
And it's like this spring loaded thing that like freaks out on you at the slightest like. I mean, it's great. It's a decoy. It's mobile. All that stuff. But what I ended up doing, because I just couldn't handle that, and I needed to be able to manage it in one hand, so I cut its head off, and so I grab it by the neck now. Like I put like a little bar in the neck thing, and so I just like grab it by the neck and just stick it straight up.
So you just
almost
have like
the ones you guys use for whitetails.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the heads up decoys. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's like that, but like a elk version, and it's
Yeah.
a cow.
Yeah, we've got a elk cow of heads up too, and it's the same thing. It's just like a neck and a head. Where
We call it Little Willie.
yeah, she's usually Susie.
Susie too. We call it Susie. Yeah.
But so earlier you talked about rubs, and for me, it's never been nothing more than just something really cool to see in the elk woods. But it sounds like you have like some strategy that goes into like when you see rubs. What is that?
It's all. I mean, it's nothing more than like. It's no different than like a track or turge or anything like that. It's just you're looking at it, seeing how fresh it is.
Yeah.
Or like same thing as if you come across a wallow. I'll give you an example that was pretty cool. Almost worked out really well. It would have been my only Colorado 6-point if it had worked out. But I was walking along kind of through this bedding area, going kind of slow. It's kind of mid-morning. Things kind of died down a little bit. It's like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to go check some more wallows, see what's happening, see if I could. What am I going to do now that's, things have died down a little bit? But anyway, I come past this smaller pine and I look at it and it's like, yeah, I've been seeing rubs obviously because I'm in where the elk are. And, but this one was like the pine sap hadn't even had a chance to come out of the tree yet.
Oh.
And so I'm like, oh man, like this thing just happened. There's something real close to me here. So in this situation, I got my, that elk head I was telling you about, decoy, and I pinned it to the tree, to the pine tree. So it was just hanging there because I wanted to be kind of mobile and not have to hold it the whole time. And then I was like, okay, now I'm just going to throw out some cow calls and just did some of those soft mews like, hey, what's going on around here? Because it had quieted down, so I don't want to do too much noise. And then maybe like 100-ish yards above me, there's some more pines. And it's pretty clear up until there. And sure enough, there's a bull up there. And like, I don't know why he wasn't smelling me. Like my wind should have gone right up to him, but maybe he was smelling me. I don't know. But basically he just kept doing this. I would call and then he kind of like lightly bugle back because he's like a little, he's a little satellite bull. He doesn't want to cause attention to the situation. Mm-hmm. And kind of like some of these little squeals. He's like, hey, yeah, just like pop up here, girl. And he ends up just doing like these horseshoe semicircles and around. And he's like, obviously looking for me. And I don't know, he probably didn't see the decoy or whatever. Or he's like looking for a rest of a body or something. But he was not coming in. But he kept doing these squeals. I mean, solid 10 minutes where he's just like, and I was trying a lot. Then I was like, like getting after him, like trying to like, because there's no way I could have gone to him because it was too open and all that. He would have seen me for sure. So I'm like, well, we'll see. Like maybe this guy's still hanging around. So whatever, I'll keep trying. And finally, after like 10 minutes or so, he just kind of heads straight out of there. I'm like, okay, finally you smell me or something. I don't know what. And because by then it was mid-morning, the thermals were going up right to him. Mm-hmm. So I was shocked he stayed as long as he did. But then next thing I know, I hear this big old bugle from down below me. And I'm like, okay, there's another one. How am I going to get down to him? But then I just see these cows charging right up to me. And I guarantee you this was the biggest bull within miles, and it was a small 6 point. So this is the type of stuff we're going after here. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
But anyway, he chases him up, and then they get about 100 yards away from me, just to the side. Like, so they're coming up the hill. The wind's great. And then he bumps him again. It was really cool to watch. And like his tongue's out, they're all breathing heavy. And he bumps him like 90 degrees, come right at me. And then they're like 30 yards, and he bumps them again. And they come like 10 yards right through me. And I see the cows are all funneling through. And I'm like, okay, I could have shot this cow. But there's a bull. And like in the past, I have like considered shooting cows in that situation, just because,
Yeah. Oh,
it was an opportunity, you know.
Me too.
But I'm like, dang, man, this bull is surely going to follow. And so the cows go by, and I'm like, okay, here's the window. And I'm like full drawn. And like right as he gets to this window, I like give him a mew or something to stop, like, ew. And like he stops, but like he's literally 10 yards. And there's like this little bush covering the vitals. Like I didn't really see it in the heat of the action until like he was stopped. I'm like, he stopped right the best spot, but I don't know. Looking back, I kick myself a lot for because I'm like, I could have probably still shot like 1 yard at 10 yards is probably not going to like do too much. I don't know. I've never really played with that, but
I don't know what you were shooting. I'm sure your setup was different, but actually, one of those rose bushes cost me an elk at 11 yards in 2013. I was shooting.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I called in a bull from way across a meadow. It was awesome, and this thing just came in running, and he was it was the first bull I've ever called in actually, and because I didn't have a clue what I was doing, it just happened. So it's like, oh, awesome. Well. I didn't have a compound at the time. I thought I was Mr. Cool, and I was shooting a recurve. And, it's just I wasn't really shooting heavy enough. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, pretty much. But, I clipped the top of a rose bush that was like at 9 yards. Bull was at 11, and it just went right underneath his belly. So it's something. It's something that, not saying you
that makes me feel better, telling you.
Yeah. I don't know if you should or should not have taken the shot, but, at least have some solace in that, at least you didn't have to deal with the rejection that I did,
Totally. Yeah. It's still cool experiences though. It's like, it's crazy. Like he's running by, tongue out, breathing heavy.
Oh yeah.
Just like, so cool.
Man, there's something about that. Like, once you get within like 30 yards of an elk, you hear new noises and stuff that like just they become a whole new animal almost, And,
totally, yeah.
And not that I'm poo-pooing on anyone who rifle hunts elk or anything because it's awesome, but like, dude, when you get tight to them, it's a eye-opening experience because they're so cool, for lack of a better adjective, Like, man,
yeah, it's crazy, and you start to realize, like, dang, I've never really this close to animals, I see them all the time, all over the place, but I'm never actually like in their comfort zone, Yeah. Where you're seeing them just do like, I don't know, like you walk around town and you see some guy like scratch his head, like you don't think anything of it, but with
I don't know, with the Rona nowadays, like, anybody's it's like, I don't know about that guy.
Did he just touch his nose?
You see him pop and you're like, okay, back off.
Yeah. No, for sure, man. It's cool. And like, that's one of the things that I guess I've started to do lately, in the last few years, is really kind of start putting puzzle pieces together, where used to I was just walking around stumbling into elk and like trying to kill one. And I think I'm nowhere near like proficient at it or an expert, but like I'm starting to understand that you can do this whole thing you're talking about understanding where bedding is and wallows and all that stuff, and understanding like where you're going to be able to find elk at. And that's like the cool thing. It's one of the things that I think we crave as outdoorsmen is like that closer connection with the animal that you're chasing, or at least a lot of us do, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's so cool. That's what I love about it. I mean, it's this really, it's a super high stakes life and death chess match going on. Where it's just you versus not them, but like the mountains and lightning and everything.
Yeah. Ooh.
It's like, we'll see what happens out here.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's the other thing that I don't think people talk about enough in September is like how the weather can be brutal, man. Like,
nobody talks about that. And
Yeah.
it is so crazy, dangerous, or sketchy. I don't know why people don't talk about it, because it is forefront in my mind all the time. And so like seeing these people camped on these ridges, I'm like, you guys are crazy, because I've been in situations where I've been, way up high on these ridges, and then lightning storm rolled in, and I've literally gone 1,000 feet down and seen like tractor beam lightning bolts hit below me.
Ooh.
And like not only above me, but below me.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is some real stuff. Like, people get hit by lightning. Elk hunters get hit by lightning every single year.
Yeah.
Scary, man.
Yeah, it's a thing. I mean, what year did you and I go hunt? 2016?
17.
So 2017, it wasn't like a thunderstorm as much as just a soaking rain.
Oh,
and it was one of those days where it went from like 80 probably during the daytime to like, right at primetime hits when the rain started, of course. And dude, it got to like 38 and wet and rainy. And
we had ice on everything when we woke up the next morning.
We weren't prepared really with like, well, we probably were prepared. Sometimes you're hard-headed and you're like, oh, it's going to stop, so you don't mess with getting your rain gear out. And then you end up soaking wet, and it's like a hypothermia situation, and you have to keep moving, otherwise you're going to freeze to death,
Totally.
And in fact, we met a guy on a two-track who was riding his like a little Ranger or whatever, and he's like, guys, I'd give you a ride, but I can't stop because I'm freezing, and we were walking, and we were kind of fine, But
wow,
yeah. And I don't know, it's just one of those, and I'm sure you Coloradoans like laugh at us, but Flatlanders, we're just not used to that kind of stuff. It's just stuff that you have to think about, or at least need to educate yourself on, because it's just not something you experience very often.
Well, it's not a Flatlander thing either. Like, I didn't know until I ran into those situations.
Yeah.
I didn't know until I was scouting one summer in blue jeans and a cotton t-shirt because it was 80 degrees out with no rain jacket, nothing. And then I get caught in a lightning hailstorm and like freezing my tail off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super crazy. And and then there's been other situations. Like, I was on a hunt another time when it rained constantly. You just couldn't get out of it. So everything was drenched. And so finally we had a nice day, and I just stripped down in my boxers and dried everything out and suntanned the whole day. It's like, you got to be out here to be in the elk. So I don't really want to go home.
Oh yeah.
But you still got to like be in a place where you can functionally like hunt. Cause if you're not comfortable and able to be safe, then like there's not going to be any hunting going on.
Yeah. That kind of brings me to a thought that I've been thinking about lately with, there's some people that kind of are inquisitive about, like, I've done these big family camping trips the last 2 years where one was like 11 days. We went all the way up to Montana and back. The other one was 28 days. And, that's just like in a truck with a topper, no RV, no, anything other than just we're camping basically, tent camping by the truck on our way. And so anyway, had some people kind of inquisitive about like, well, what do you take, and this and that. And I'm glad to give out a list of things that I'll take, but just it's the same way like when we ask you about your hunting tactic, like everybody's going to do it a little bit different, right? And some people are going to have a different things that they prefer. So, for instance, my dad hates uncomfortable shirts, towels, anything. Like, he can't stand the feeling. But, like, for me, I'll put on the most terrible $3 shirt and be okay with it all day usually and not think two times about it if I'm working hard. And so, like, my point is, like, comfort items look different for different people. And basically, my bigger point here is that like until you go and do things, you don't really know what you need or how to do it better until you've done it right. And so I think that a kind of big concept here is that like don't overextend yourself when you go on your first elk hunt. You know what I'm saying? Like don't go 7 miles back into the wilderness on your first elk hunt, because you're either going to be miserable probably at some point or you're going to die. And it's like, you know, preferably neither one of those happen.
Both of those are bad options.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Like, what if you don't see elk? Like, you're 7 miles in, you don't see elk. What are you going to do?
Yeah. You're going to hate yourself and you're never going to go elk hunting again.
Or what if you do kill one and then you have to figure out how to pack that thing out for 7 miles and you've never done anything close to that?
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
It's the same thing with deer hunting, too. Like, it's like if you haven't ever deer hunted, don't go hunt public land in Texas. You know what I mean? Go hunt. Go get find somebody who you know that'll let you hunt, or go, hunt a feeder, pay for a lease, whatever, just get your feet wet and learn how to do this a little bit better before you go do it. If you're going to go on a big camping trip, camp in a nice campground at first, but do it out of a tent, and then take the next step, whatever that is. But like, don't go on a camping trip that's, at the top of a 14er or something like that. You know what I mean?
No thanks.
Well, and that's just it too. It's like, do what's comfortable to you. Like that couldn't be, I can't say that like more strongly. Like that's a really good point, because like, what are you eating when you're at home? What are you sleeping in when you're at home? Mm-hmm. Like you come out in the woods and all of a sudden everything's top of the line, brand new, fancy, but you're not comfortable with any of it. Mm-hmm. So like, if you're going to start wearing like merino to keep you safe, if you get covered in lightning, like, maybe you should start wearing merino around every day. Uh-huh. Or if you're going to start, if your plan is to eat granola bars all the time on a backcountry hunt, then like, would you eat granola bars every day at your house? Probably not. So start like, figuring out a plan that's going to actually feed you. Yeah. Because that's the other thing. Like it's just so weird. Like the mental aspect starts playing games because you're like, I'm not used to any of this. Yeah. It's so unfamiliar. Like, I just got to get out of here. Yeah. Like, I'm worried about what's going on at home. I'm worried about maybe someone will break into my truck where I parked it. Like, just weird stuff. Like, and so just having those kind of creature comforts really have helped me a lot get more comfortable in the woods.
Oh, yeah.
One thing I always do, or I always try to do, is when I'm sleeping, I try to have one sort of like thing for comfort, which is generally like a merino shirt.
I'm glad you didn't say teddy bear.
Well, it's kind of like, I don't know, could be teddy bear if I roll it up, sure. With it. But it's just something to like, I'm not in my sweaty, nasty clothes, because I don't sleep in sweaty, nasty clothes at home. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like, it's just something to make me a little more comfortable, and that those little things add up, and they just, next thing you know, you're doing okay out there, and you can keep persisting because things are going to get tough. So you might as well not make more stuff tougher on yourself.
Yeah. Right? And that's one of the beautiful things about like doing the truck camping thing and, just doing loops during the day is that, man, around day 5, whenever you just can't take it anymore, you can run to town and get a burger one night, and like sometimes that's the pick me up you need to just push through the next couple of days of the hunt. And I've done that on more than one occasion, and I know it's a huge morale booster, Oh
yeah, that's huge. I mean, could you imagine being the guy who goes into a drainage on day 1, 7 miles, totally exhausted, then someone else comes in, scares away all the elk, and you're stuck there for another 7 days.
Yeah, Ooh. Crying for 7 days straight. Yeah.
That sounds like one of my worst nightmares.
So like, yeah, for sure. It's hugely important to me, because then I'm doing those laps while car camping, and say I go do all my laps and I don't see any good sign that I'm liking. Maybe people have been in there super heavily already, and it's just, for whatever reason, it's not the kind of sign I'm looking for that's going to, give me the odds that I'm needing to be successful. Then I just go back to the truck and go somewhere else. It's not that big of a deal. I would say staying mobile is like one of the most critical things for success.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, we're kind of running a little bit longer on time than what we told you we would do. So I got a plan. All right,
it's good stuff.
It's good stuff, man. Dadgummit. And we've already know this, but we could talk about this stuff for forever. So what we're gonna do is just hit you with a couple like real high level hitters, like just kind of like some question and answer stuff for guys who maybe you're intimidated by the thought of elk hunting or really want to come out and actually have some success. All right. So
Cool.
This is the Eric Whiting 101 How to Hunt Elk school right here. All right. So,
All right.
All right. Are elk food or trophies?
Oh man, that's not a yes or no question.
I didn't say yes or no. I mean,
They're trophies. If I wanted to go get food, I would go to the store. I mean, come on. Let's be real here, guys.
all right, cool. So if somebody wants to come out and just kill an elk, what would be like the paragraph that you would tell them? What should they do?
Spend time where elk are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yep. Just be out there.
Sounds simple.
Should they
Yeah.
stop on the way and buy some calls, or should they pay more attention
If they want to. I mean, you can. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I would just say if there's little things a person can do to be more successful, and you want to be, good enough at them that you can do them and successfully, then add those to your toolbox. But at the end of the day, if you're not in elk, you're not going to shoot an elk.
Yeah.
I would rather you sit in good elk sign all day long than someone be like, well, I give up because I don't have the right, elk call or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got you. Would you tell somebody to try to be there for the opener in archery season, or try to be there at the peak of the rut?
Yeah, totally opener. Any time of the month, it does not matter whatsoever.
Yeah.
I shot bulls all through the month. But yeah, it does not matter whatsoever, because for over-the-counter elk, I'm not just playing the calls. I'm using every tool in the toolbox. I'm spotting stalking. I'm sitting wallows. I'm hanging out at saddles, whatever it may be. If I'm only planning on hunting a herd bull, then yeah, probably the last couple weeks of the month.
Gotcha. Well, you're probably going to be hunting the last couple weeks of the month this year because you're looking for a big one, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do this year. I drew cool tags, so it's a little bit different going in blind, but really looking forward to it. And yeah, for the first time, I think I'd be okay not pulling the trigger on a elk that's over the counter quality.
Yeah.
Do you if you get a chance to hunt elk the next 10 years, how many elk do you expect to kill?
If it's one tag per year, then I expect to kill one every year.
Mm-hmm.
Like I may not, but every second I'm out there, I expect to kill one.
Gotcha.
I like it.
That sounds weird, but you got to be fully in it or you're fully out of it.
Yeah, that's how you get through the 10 till 2 time period. Otherwise, you just go crazy for those 4 hours in the middle of the day,
Yeah, exactly. It could be like, man, I know there's some fresh sign right over this little turn. Oh, nothing, whatever. It just it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm going that next spot, whatever, the next spot. Every second I'm out there, I anticipate killing one.
When you're looking at OTC units doing some internet scouting and stuff, how much attention do you pay to success rates and herd densities and stuff like that?
I don't pay any attention to that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't matter at all.
Yeah,
it's all about what I do out there. That's the only thing I can control.
Yeah. I like it. How do you know that there's elk in a unit?
If it's a Western Colorado unit, there's probably going to be over-the-counter elk unit. There's going to be some elk there.
Nice. Mm-hmm. That makes me feel good.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. Well, good luck this coming year, man. We're going to keep close tabs on it, man. We're going to be wishing you the best luck, sending you all the good vibes and everything, man. And thanks for hopping on the phone with us, man.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys' time, and I'm humbled to be on. This is cool.
Well, thanks, dude. We'll be talking to you.
Right on.
Now that was some killer info. Don't forget to subscribe, and a 5-star review means a ton to us.
Remember, this is your element.
Living it.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer is going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.